This podcast is a part of the Podmania Podcasting Network. Check out podmania.co.uk to check out more of our great podcasts, features, reviews, match ratings and previews spanning the crazy and diverse world of professional wrestling.
To the Stardom Cast, your weekly audio source of all things World Wondering Stardom, right here on the Podmania Podcasting Network. I'm your host, Rob Good, and I'm joined, as always, by the independent wrestling genius that is Matt Turner. Matt, how are you?
I am fantastic. Rob, you handsome devil, you. How are you doing on this lovely day?
Not too bad, not too bad. It might be nice where you are at the moment, Matt, but we are on the tail end of a storm. I can't remember which one it is, Storm Mary or something. So we have lots of fallen trees and rain and just general misery. But you know what? We've had a Stardom show that has brightened up my week. What about you? How are you doing?
It's raining a little bit here, but we're supposed to, in about 8 to 10 hours, we're supposed to get a storm as well. So it might be a day off work and a day off school for the daughter tomorrow. So that would mean more time to catch up on comics and wrestling. So we'll see. We shall see how you can never depend on the weathermen around here. You know, they're always inconsistently consistent. So.
Absolutely. The only thing they're consistent with is their inconsistencies. I mean, there was that famous one in Britain where a weatherman came onto the TV and was like, we are absolutely not going to get a tornado. Don't worry, it's definitely not going to happen. And then obviously, sure enough, a tornado came and ripped through one of the cities. So, I don't think I'd trust a weatherman if he told me the world was circle. So, other than that, though, obviously we're here to talk about Nagoya Supreme Fight, the first Stardom pay-per-view of 2022. Before we kick into everything else, Matt, what were your overall thoughts on this pay-per-view?
So solid. I mean, we're going to go, me and you, I was texting you as I was watching this yesterday, and I just saw this maybe about 15, 16 hours ago, so it's pretty fresh in my mind. So we were kind of going back and forth, and we'll let the listeners in on some of the texting that me and you were going back and forth, because it was generally cracking up. I was literally on my couch laughing, and I thought my wife and my daughter were going to have me committed as I'm sitting there by myself, just laughing at the text conversations we were having. But no, this was a solid pay-per-view to, like as you said, it's the first one. I thought everything was really, everything was good. Everything made sense. There were some absolute bangers here. I thought the way the match order was absolutely perfect. And and obviously there's a lot of angles, couple few angles here that you're kind of scratching your head in a good way, saying, okay, now what are they going to do here? Like, what are they doing with that? Oh, they're bringing prominence in. What's going to possibly happen there? And we didn't get the mystery person that we thought we were going to get as well. And I think I know the reason why for that. But I guess we'll get right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's loads of stuff to talk about in terms of the pay-per-view. And don't forget, this is a pay-per-view where ordinarily after a title match, we see another person challenge. And we didn't have any of that in any of the title matches here. So it's left things very, very open-ended. Now, just a couple of things before we do kick into our review of Nagoya Supreme Fight. We're not going to be talking about the 1st of February Korakuen show, the continuation of the New Year Stars. Obviously, our patrons will get this episode on Friday. Everyone else on the free feed will get this on Sunday. And as we're recording on the 3rd, it wasn't feasible to watch this in time to record. So we're going to record that and then put it out next week, basically. Speaking of our Patreon, I just want to remind everyone that we have got a competition that we are going to be running when more information has been released about the Cinderella Tournament. Matt, do you just want to briefly recap what we're doing with that?
Absolutely. Once the Cinderella tournament starts, and I know they announced the dates, and forgive me, I think it's the first week of April. I don't know. Do you have the dates over there, Rob? You do your homework better than I do.
At the moment, I actually don't have it up, but I do believe it is the first week in April.
So what we're going to do is once the brackets are announced, now the only thing they announced was the dates and the fact that it's going to be the largest field in the history of the Cinderella tournament. Once all the participants are announced, and if you are a Patreon member, which you can subscribe for as little as $1, what you do is you have to get your prediction in to either me or Rob on who's going to be in the finals and who is going to win. And what if you are correct, once the Cinderella tournament is over, I will mail you a t-shirt of our new design. And if you haven't seen our new design yet, it is Mayu Iwatani doing the moonsault in her red championship gear. I will mail you a t-shirt at my own cost. Again, if you have to, have the finals right with the winner, and it has to be in before the Cinderella tournament starts. And if we have 25 or more people that enter the tournament, and if you do get it right, not only will I mail you a t-shirt, but you will also get Rob's book, Living the Dream, Stardom's 10th anniversary in review. If you want the ebook or the hardcover like I have, I will mail you those two completely at my cost. So if you're on the fence on joining the Patreon, first of all, if you are on the Patreon, we thank you. And if you're on the fence and join the Patreon, all it is $1 a month, and you can get you might be able to win yourself a t-shirt, and you might be able to win yourself a fancy book that is that I literally pick up almost 3 or 4 times a day. So I know Rob is probably going to have some sort of graph or something, or Excel spreadsheet or something fancy once that comes about. But that's basically, again, kind of just wetting the beak there a little, giving you an idea of what we're going to do. So if you're on the fence about it, it only costs you $1, and you could enter in this contest. And if we have a good response, which I feel like we're going to do, I think this is something that we'll be doing, on and on more, because I think it just makes it even that more fun, interact with the fans like that.
Absolutely, and we mentioned it before that we're thinking about doing this for the 5-star as well. In terms of the Cinderella tournament, it begins on April the 3rd, continues on April 17th, and then the finals are on April 29th at Ota Ward City Gymnasium, where they held the final of the 5-star last year, and Tokyo Dream Cinderella, of course. So they're carrying on with the 3-day format. Of course, like Matt said, we are going to be having the biggest ever Cinderella field. So once the brackets are announced, it's going to be interesting to break that down. And obviously, once we've got everything in place, we'll put some sort of Google Forms up or something like that for you to access that. In terms of our patrons, honestly, we cannot thank you enough, and I just want to give them a shout out. Joseph Usher, Rob Jones, Niagara Driver, John Owen, Velkage Bracker, Tom, Ed BC, Brandon Neal, Emerson Stone, Alex Tremaine, IWEP Network, Mike, Spike SP, and then our brand new patrons, Jeff Baker, Doden Solar, Steve Kaklamanos. Again, Steve, I'm really sorry if I've mispronounced that. Please get in touch and let me know. And Colin Matthew. We cannot thank you enough for subscribing to our Patreon. If you are on the fence about joining, we've just dropped our 3rd Patreon exclusive episode, which was our top 10 hidden gems of 2021. So go and check that out. That's for our red belt and our white belt tiers. But enough is enough. Let's kick straight into this show. The first pay-per-view, like I said, of 2022. It happened on the 29th of January from the Aichi Prefectural Gymnasium in Nagoya, Japan. We had an attendance of 1,306. So just a couple of stats before we head into the actual matches. This is Stardom's first time in the Dolphin Arena in Aichi. The average attendance in 2020, there's only been 2 promotions who ran it in 2020, and that was New Japan and Dragon Gate. They could collectively had a average attendance of 1,989. So Stardom's attendance is a little bit below the average. Dragon Gate, it was their Dead or Alive show, which is one of the biggest shows of the year after Kobo World. In May last year, they hit 2,180. New Japan ran the venue 5 times last year, and it ranged from just over 2,000 for the New Beginning in Nagoya to 1,700 for the Best of the Super Juniors 28 Night 4. So make of that what you will. Obviously, people have different opinions of where Stardom's standing is compared to the Dragon Gate shows and the New Japan shows. New Japan are inherently a bigger company. Dragon Gate's Dead or Alive show is literally their second biggest show of the year. So I'd take those stats with a pinch of salt, but I was just interested to see where the attendance sort of fit in terms of that. Also, and possibly bigger than that, was the fact that just before the show, Waka Tsukiyama, Mei Sakurai, and Tam Nakano were pulled from the card, apparently due to poor health. It makes me believe that it's COVID-related. I haven't seen anything confirming that, but I am sort of assuming, with them all being Cosmic Angels, it makes sense for them all to be COVID-related. And then the card was changed accordingly, Matt.
Yeah, I know that you didn't want any spoilers. I went on Twitter first thing that morning, which usually by the time I get up and get going, usually the show's over, and that was the first thing I saw. And I think I texted you a picture and said, hey, this isn't, I took a picture. I think Rossi sent something out saying that these three will not be on the show. We have to shuffle the card. I took a picture of it and I sent it to you and I said, hey, it's not a spoiler. And then we both kind of were discussing back and forth that it was COVID related. And I was trying to get on a plane to go to Japan just to make sure that Tam was okay. Which obviously that's a joke, guys. I was not. But there's always a silver lining in certain things. Obviously, I was upset. You're upset that those three aren't going to be there, especially Tam, to be in that three-way match, just because there's so many different outcomes that could have happened. And Tam, Mayu, and obviously Julia are three fantastic workers, and you want to see that what's going to happen. But then as you kind of take a step back and think, okay, well, Tam's not in there. We're going to have a singles match between Mayu and Julia. They had an absolute banger at the 5-star last year. I believe it was on the second or third day. One of the best matches of the 5-star. And then kind of as that thought's going through my head, the match is finishing, and you're basically having everybody say, 4.5-star match, 4 3/4, 5-star, match of the year contender, not only in Stardom, but in wrestling as well. So you're just like, well, I guess if the worst thing coming out of this is the fact that we get a match of the year contender, and obviously all three of those girls recover from what we think is COVID, that's pretty much not a bad plan B. So, unfortunately, we live in just uncertain stances. Being around, that many people, not only the locker room, but look how many people were in the show. What was the attendance, Rob? 1,300?
1,306. So, yeah, just over.
Yeah, I mean, that's a heck of a crowd. So, I mean, that's a heck of a house. So you kind of just don't know what's going to happen. But we hope that all three of them, get well soon. So it's just like, yeah, as is always on the posters for independent wrestling and wrestling as well, on the bottom right-hand side in very small print, card subject to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank God, everyone seems to be okay, and hopefully we'll be seeing them sooner rather than later. We opened with our pre-show five-woman... Sorry, my cat's jumped onto the desk, which has completely thrown me. The five-way battle.
Doing a run-in.
Yeah, she's gone full of winner tie. And we had Momo Kogo winning the pre-show battle royal in 6 minutes and 37 seconds via over the top rope, last eliminating Ruaka and Rina. Also Saki Kashima and Fukigen Death were a part of that. Little bit surprising, Matt, that they gave Momo Kogo the win here.
I thought it was good. You're pushing her, and obviously I'm just from the little I've seen on her, she's very passionate, and I'm very big into that, and I'm very big the fact that she's in Stars group. Just really kind of two small notes I have here. I'm hoping that we get to see a Momo Kogo versus Saki match, like a one-on-one, nice 7-8 minute match. I think the two of them had really good chemistry from the little bit we had here. And then something else that I thought was kind of noteworthy, the last thing that they show before they cut the camera and go to the next match is after Momo wins, she starts making her way up the rampway, and she kind of gets the rub from her teammates. Obviously, you have the tag champs that she's with, at FWC, Hazuki and Koguma, and Mayu Utani, who's the Stardom legend, the Stardom icon. So I thought that was a nice little way to kind of end that, quote unquote segment. I mean, it's great that she won, and it was basically a 4-on-1 handicap match. So she wins that. She gets the rub on a pre-show battle royal on a pay-per-view. And then at the very end, she gets the big congratulations from 3 people that are on top of the card and that were, in prominent matches in this card as well. So I thought that was a nice little, I don't know if anybody picked up on it or if it was something that was kind of supposed to happen. But to me, I kind of wrote that down as a note as got the nice little thumbs up there from all three members of Stars. And I think that's good. I can only just help her out.
Absolutely. It's certainly a big rub to have it from Mayu, especially. It seems like, that Stardom are really high on Momokogo. And, we saw her debut against Unagi, and we were both, there was things that she could obviously improve on. I mean, she's still quite green, but I think this was a good result because, you've got Oedo Tai literally being to Oedo Tai to win, which I thought was quite funny. But ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, this is throwaway. Nobody's going to care that Momokogo won a pre-show battle royal against four. I'm hesitant to use the word chump, but, chumps from Oedo Tai. It's hardly top-level Oedo Tai. So, but ultimately, nice rub for Momokogo, gives her that little bit of momentum going forward. A little bit sad that she's already won more matches than Waka Tsukiyama, but there we are. I didn't bother rating this one, Matt, because it was the pre-show.
I gave it 2 stars, just in case if anybody cares.
We move on to the main card then, and we go to the Future of Stardom Championship match with Hanan, the champion, defeating a thankfully recovered Lady C with the Hanan special in 5 minutes and 56 seconds. This, for me, Matt, was a far cleaner match than the Dream Queendom match between Hanan and Ruaka.
Yeah, I thought this was really good. They kept it simple. Everything made sense. Lady C throwing the big chops, including the Baba chop. She did a really good job, using her sides to her advantage. A lot of back work, which played into the finish because Hannah goes for the Hanan special the first time. As soon as she hits it, she can't cover because she's selling the back, and she's doing a very good job selling after she hits a big move and she's projecting to the crowd. And that was almost like, a little Mayu Iwatani-esque. So I think, we wax poetically of how fantastic Mayu Iwatani is selling, and we'll get into later on about how fantastic she was in the co-main event. But you can kind of see that some of the Mayu Iwatani stuff is rubbing off on Hannah, and it just made the finish made that much more sense because then she wind up, powering through and hits the Hannah special again. But I thought this was a really solid match. I gave this 3.25 stars. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, there was a great moment where Lady C hits this enormous choke slam and Hanan grabs the ropes at literally the last possible second. I thought that was a really, really well-worked spot. Hanan is improving all the time, and aside from one rough-looking famouser, the rest of the match went incredibly smoothly. I think Lady C, again, is improving time and time and time again. Really, really impressed with this match. I was a little bit more down on it than you were. I gave it 2 3/4. I wasn't sure whether to give it 3, but overall, considering the Future of the Stardom Championship is quite literally a building championship, a rookie championship, I think these two women put on a very, very good match for it. Unfortunately, that is overshadowed almost entirely as Prominence come down to the ring. Now, for those who, like me, didn't know who Prominence were, they'd heard the name, but basically they are previous Ace-like figures. They're people like Risa Sera, Suzu Suzuki, Akana Fujita, and Miyagi, and Kurumi. Basically, they are a group of people, a group of wrestlers that left Ice Ribbon to form their own promotion, to do more deathmatch stuff, become freelancers, and things like that. So they came to the ring. They introduced themselves as the Joshi Puroresu Hardcore Deathmatch Unit, and then call out Julia. Now, Suzu Suzuki, who is the red-haired one, she has history with Julia. They all have history with Julia. Obviously, Julia jumped ship in 2019 from Ice Ribbon. But she was Julia's dojo roommate. So there is significant history between those two. And Julia makes a comment about Prominence, about, aren't you supposed to be happy with pro wrestling? Which I thought was quite funny, considering that's Ice Ribbon's tagline. So Suzuki slaps her, calls her Julia-san, then changes her mind and calls her just Julia. Then says that Julia betrayed her when she left, that the place had fallen to pieces, and then bursts into tears and says, I trusted you. And I thought it was a really, really poignant, really well done promo. Julia tries to take credit for Prominence leaving, but this incenses Risa Serra, who's the blue-haired one, and she pushes Julia down, declares war for March at Sumo Hall. Julia attacks. Prominence grab her. Suzu's about to hit Julia with a hammer, but Tekla stops her, and DDM rush the ring to help. It's interesting. It's a great angle, and I'm really, really excited to see where they go for this, especially if they do something hardcore when it comes to the World Climax shows in March. Ice Ribbon taking a battering in this promo, though, Matt. Jesus.
Yeah, really. But no, I thought this was really well done. And again, I don't know too many. I know Suzy Suzuki, just because you hear somebody that has the last name Suzuki, and you automatically think, for me, Minoru Suzuki. But obviously I know that she's big into deathmatch. I have a friend of mine who's actually over here in the States is a 2-time IWA Mid-South queen of the deathmatch that I talk to on a daily basis. So, she'll talk about the death matches, and I'll talk about, really good hard striking wrestling. So that's how I kind of know that name. But I thought this was a really good way to introduce them. Obviously, they're feuding with one of the top factions in Stardom. And I kind of want to get your opinion on something, Rob, just to play kind of maybe armchair booker, and maybe just because this happens a lot over here in the States, is maybe I would have changed this up a little bit, because before they came out, after Hana won, Momo Kogo announced that she wanted to wrestle for the Futures of Stardom title. So they were kind of having a little promo there, very, shaking the hands. Obviously, they're in the same faction. And then what I would have done is then maybe Lady C grabs the microphone and says, I'm going to build myself back up, and I want a shot at the Future of Stardom title. And the three of them are in the ring, and then Prominence comes out and then jumps them. I think maybe that would have got a little bit more juice out of the squeeze. What do you think? Or am I just thinking too American over here with the jumping?
No, I definitely think it'd have been more impactful. I think the issue is, obviously, we've very, very recently done an angle like that with the Momo masks. And I think another angle where we get jumped and, attackers and assailants, I think it's two in very, very quick succession. It's a shame they've already done that, because, like I say, having them lay out wrestlers and then call out Julia would have been slightly more impactful. But again, it works for me. I do like it. The thing for me now is, I assume they're going to continue being freelancers. Obviously, that's why they left Ice Ribbon. But are they going to be their own faction in Stardom? How often are we going to see them in Stardom? Do we see some prominent members feature in the Cinderella or the 5-star? There's a lot of questions to be asked. And obviously, the only thing we know at the moment is that there's going to be some sort of war at Ryogoku. So, an exciting time. It was certainly something that took me by surprise. Obviously, I think this took the place of the surprise that Saya Kamatani was going to be talking about. But even so, really, really excited to see where this goes. We move on then to the second match.
Not to interrupt you, Rob.
No, please.
Now, how many members of Prominence were there? There was 5, right? Do I have that right?
There's 5, but one is out injured at the moment.
Okay, so it's. I'm assuming that the first match is probably a 5-on-5. What 5 people? If you're Rossi, if you're booking this, what 5 people from DDM are going to be on the DDM side? I would have Micah, Himika, Julia, Siri, and I would go with Mirai, just because I think she's the heavier hitter between her and Tekla Natsupoi. Those are the 5 that I would put in. How about you?
I think Tekla's a shoe-in because she's just come from Ice Ribbon. It makes sense.
Good. And she was the first one to hit the ring for the save. Good point. Good point.
Exactly. She worships Julia, so it makes sense that, those two would be in it. For me, it would probably be Julia. We already know that the red belt champion is going to be defending on both nights. So let's, for argument's sake, say that that's going to be Syuri.
Yeah.
Let's say Micah and Himika.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's why I asked you. That's why I asked you the big questions. You know what I mean? That's why they pay you the big bucks, sir.
But either way, they could do a 5-on-5 elimination match on the first night. Oh no, Julie's on the first night fighting Suri, so it'll be on the second night. But spoilers. But if they could do something like, I don't know, not maybe maybe not go full death match, but certainly hardcore.
Yeah, like a 5-on-5, almost like relaxed rules, and just have like almost like an away to tie style brawl, like ECW style. You know, I grew up 2 hours away from Philadelphia, where you would always have these crazy ECW style 6-mans or 8-mans or tag team matches that just brawled all over the place, and you're just as a fan, you're like, I don't know what to watch. Am I watching these two guys over here? Am I watching New Jack jump off the balcony here? I don't know what to watch, but I'm having the time of my life. I think that's what they do. I think they just have just a wild 10 or 12-minute brawl that ends with Prominence getting the win. I think in the first match, Prominence has to win. You can't just bury them on the first match.
No, and I know that obviously DDM are booked incredibly strong as a faction, but, you know, it'll be interesting to see maybe a tackler eat the last pin or something like that. You know, obviously she's a connection with Ice Ribbon. She's probably Julia's best friend in that faction at the moment, so it makes sense for her to take the final pinfall. I'd be very interested to see what they do. Obviously, we'll see a little bit more when it comes closer to the day. Match 2 then on this main card was a tag team match. Originally, this was supposed to be a singles match. The Uedatai team of Starlight Kid and Momo Watanabe defeated the Queen's Quest team of Utami Hayashishita and Azumi with a brand new move from Starlight Kid, a Spanish fly that she seems to be calling the Eternal Foe in 9 minutes and 43 seconds. Matt, what was your opinion of this?
I really enjoyed it. This was really good. Azumi came out really shot out of a cannon. I mean, she went right after Momo, and at 90 seconds in, she hits Momo with the punk kick that took her out. And she sold it real well. She hit it, and she looked at Momo like, haha, I got you. And then she sold it real well to the crowd. My biggest two complaints about the match is I wish it went a little bit longer, but I understand it's a pay-per-view. And there wasn't much. Utami really wasn't in the match. Everything she did made sense and was really good. She was super, super aggressive. And her and Momo had a really good promo afterwards that obviously they're building to something. But I wish Utami was in the match a little bit more. All the double teams here were really good. And I know we talked about before Momo left Queen's Quest of how well all 4 members of Queen Quest work. Obviously, the 2 tag teams were Momo and Azumi, and Utami and Saya as Aphrodite. But I'm watching this match. I'm watching the double teams that Utami and Azumi do. And I'm thinking, well, if they're going to keep Utami away from the heavyweight championship for a little bit just to cool her off because she was a part of it for over 400 days, I wouldn't mind seeing Utami and Azumi make a run for the tag belts. And Momo and Starlight Kid as well. I mean, the tag division is really, really heating up in Stardom, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But it was solid. I mean, this was all killer, no filler. And we had a new finish. Starlight Kid with the Spanish fly that looked absolutely gorgeous. And Azumi eats another pin, which we kind of figured she would, just so they're just going to, I think they're tearing her down to build her back up. You know, we all said once we get towards the end of this year that Azumi's going to be a major, major player in Stardom. But yeah, this was really good, solid. Again, I just wish this had more time, but I understand why I rated this 3 3/4 stars.
Yeah, exactly the same rating from me, to be honest. You know, there's a renewed aggression from Azumi in this match. Absolutely fantastic opening from Azumi and Momo, just highlighting some of the moves and reversals from the previous encounters, but also highlighting how much Azumi has grown, but also how much more she still needs to grow. She's continuing with the high-speed stuff that Momo knows she's going to do. Like, she's up the aggression, but Momo can still read her. And then there was a beautiful moment where we had the mirror of the finish at Korakuen, where Momo goes for the punt kick, misses, and Azumi hits one of her own. I thought that was a really nice one. Utami and Momo literally throwing each other around the ring with suplexes is great. And I literally had written in my notes for a long time, this is going to be the greatest exchange on the card. And then Julia and Mayu beat it. If I am being picky, I'm not a huge fan of the amount of ref bumps it took. It got a little bit silly towards the end.
They should have made this like a relaxed rules match, you know, because I think the tagline for this was like the grudge, and they should have just said, we're going to make this relaxed rules where you can tag, but like we're not going to put too much stuff on it. Yeah, because I'm not a big fan of that too, where it's like they're constantly, you know, bumping the ref or they're distracting the ref. You know, when Uedatai does it from time to time, it makes sense. When the Bullet Club was first formed, it was something new that they didn't see in Japan, and now they're just absolutely just destroying it with the House of Torture. And this was, you're right, it was a little bit too much.
We'd had a new tag finish from Momo and Starlight Kid. They were in position for the Magic Killer, and then Momo transitions into a Uranagi, and Starlight Kid, it's a flatliner, and it looks absolutely incredible. They hit that just before, obviously, Starlight Kid hits the Spanish Fly. Do you think that Momo should have got another pin here? Surely have a, once again, one-up Azumi. I know that obviously they're building to a high-speed match between Azumi and Starlight Kid, so that does make sense, and obviously we'll talk about that once we've gone through this show. But would you have liked to have seen Momo get the victory, or are you not particularly bothered?
I see your point, but the biggest bump of the match needs to be the finish, and the biggest bump and the biggest move of the match was the Spanish Fly. Not unless she hits the Spanish Fly, and then Momo's legal, and she just punts Azumi's head off. But at the same time, you always want to end the match, especially a match like this, with the biggest bump and the biggest move. So I understand why they did it. To me, it's not that much of a difference. But I kind of want to get your take on the post-match promo where Momo tells Utami, you don't have the red belt anymore. You're no use for me. So that's the first time since Momo has turned heel that she's mentioned the red belt. Do you think that they're planting the seeds for her at the end of these 2 March shows for her to challenge the winner?
Potentially. The only issue I have with Momo at the moment now is if she goes for the red belt, I feel like she needs to win it.
Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
Who she beats for that. If Julia takes the belt at World Climax, which obviously we'll talk about at the end of this show, then I don't feel like Momo can possibly come out and beat her. I don't see Julia, who, the company are incredibly high on. They've pushed her to the moon. She hasn't had a red belt opportunity since her debut in 2019, so this is her first shot at the belt. If she wins that belt, she's holding it for a long time. She ain't holding it for one title defense. So, do you have Syuri beat Julia and then have Syuri lose the belt to Momo? After all, they have history early on in 2021. Or do you hold out on Momo? The only issue with that, of course, is that she loses a lot of the momentum that she's gained from destroying her own faction. The longer you wait for a title shot for Momo, the less heat it'll have behind it. And
yeah. I agree. I think that they need to get the belt on Momo as soon as possible. Don't forget, Mayu is challenging for the belt as well. So you have like the most evil person in the company versus the nicest person, the angel of the company. So that's one dynamic you can go with as well. But I think that and maybe what they're doing too is, obviously I think the end result is going to be you put the belt on Julia. Just how much the company's invested in her, how well she, she's always been really good, but ever since coming back from her injury with that match at Konami at the Wrestle Queendom, Dream Queendom, she's been absolutely on fire. But at the same time, you're kind of poking the bear at what you're going to do with Utami. So if Momo gets the belt, which I think that's a smart thing, I think you need to get the belt on her soon. And this is taking nothing away against Sherry, but I think the money's in the chase. You have who beats Momo for the belt? Is it Julia? Or you have this already built-in story with Utami getting the belt back? And obviously Utami did great business as champion. So I think it's a win-win situation, but I think you just need to build to it. And I think you got to get that belt on Momo by no later than the end of April.
I think as well, and this is really important, if Momo goes for the belt and then just loses again, then all this is for naught. She's back to square one.
Yeah, you shouldn't even had her leave Queen's Quest. You should have just had, if that's what you're going to do, you should just had her stay in Queen's Quest, put some people over, and then give her and Azumi a long tag title run. Yeah, that's that. It's almost like when I see these big faction changes, to me it just reminds me of what went right so well with the NWO. Now, obviously, there's bigger stars. Hogan, Hall, and Nash were bigger stars, but once that thing hit and it caught fire, they put the belt on Hogan right away. And you had, the Big Show chasing, Luger chasing, Savage chasing. They brought Piper back, Sting chasing, with all these people chasing, and it made WCW so much money. And I think that if they kind of almost like the old saying, copy an A, get an A, if they kind of go with that, but like the longer that they're waiting to put the belt on Momo, and if she challenges and loses, well, then what's the point? You've kind of just buried the whole entire, heel faction and Momo as well.
I think as well, final thing on this, you've got to have a certain aura to be the Wonder of Stardom champion, for me, anyway. And, you know, Mayu has that aura. Utami has that aura. Syuri certainly has that aura. Murder Pirate Julia has that aura. Now, since her heel turn, for me, Momo has that aura. But, again, you know, the big thing out of that is she is the only heel out of those people that I've mentioned. You know, Julia is technically a tweener. Syuri is, you know, I think she tries to be a tweener, but she's just so lovable, she's a face. Mayu is the faciest of faces, and Utami's a face. So, you need a heel at the top of the card. Momo could be that heel at the top of the card. But we'll see where they go with it. We'll see what happens coming out of World Climax. Obviously, everything going into that is purely speculation. Let's head into match 3 then, which was for the vacant SWA Undisputed World Women's title, obviously after Syuri dropped the belt. And it saw Tekla defeat Mina Shirakawa with the DDD in 9 minutes and 58 seconds. I'm a big fan of Tekla's new ring jacket, even if the mask looks a little bit tacky. Aside from that, Matt, what did you think of this match?
You know, the last 2 weeks, me and you were kind of going back and forth about this match. We kind of had reservations whether, you know, with the build-up and all the wacky stuff. Right from the get-go, the two of them come out, look at stars. You know, Tekla with the ring jacket. Mina has just an absolute ton of charisma. And this match, to me, hit. I thoroughly enjoyed this match. They did what they needed to do. This match was completely different than everything on the card, and that's a good thing. It didn't go too long. I think if it went like 45... 50 or maybe a minute, you know, or 45 seconds longer or a minute longer, I thought it would have been too long. But also I thought if they would have shaved off, you know, 30, 40 seconds, it would have told the total story. So I think the timing they got was absolutely perfect. The psychology was there. It was good back and forth. Everything made sense. The timing was really good. Ring positioning was really good. All the little stuff that I look for that make a good match great and a great match excellent. And I thought this was absolutely solid. Now, it's not going to, you know, win any awards at the end of the year for match of the year, but for between the entrances and what happened at the end for the 14, 15 minutes that this was on my screen, I was very entertained. And I thought this was, again, for a match that I kind of had reservations about. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I said, both of them came off looking like stars, and I think that you're going to probably see a rematch somewhere here down the line. Solid match. I gave this one 3.25 stars.
Once again, we are really in sync. 3.25 stars from me as well. These two have a good connection, which makes me think that we haven't seen the end of this, similar to you. There was an absolutely outstanding opening exchange. You know, it takes a lot to get... You know, I know that we talk about Mina's poses and Tekla's poses, but to get that pose in sync as well as they did after doing what they did, it takes a lot of timing, and I thought they did that fantastically. Mina's chest by the end of this match is absolutely blistered to hell. It looks like a pound of mincemeat. Tekla goes to town with those chops. But genuinely, once we, you know, dispel some of the comedy, you know, chasing each other around the ring and things like that, it's actually a decent match. It's a well-wrestled match. I mean, for a start, Tekla transitions out of the glamorous driver far better than Tam did at, not Kawasaki Super Wars, Tokyo Super Wars. So, genuinely a very, very well wrestled match. There was a top rope implant DDT, second one in the middle of the ring, but she's actually selling her frustration, Tekla this is, a lot better than she's sold anything else since she's been on the roster. Yes, we had the laughter to start off with. Fine, don't care. That's her character. As we got into this match and Mina keeps kicking out, you can see visible frustration in Tekla's face. And that's great. We're getting a little bit of growth from that character, which is what we were so worried we weren't going to get. There's a great moment where Tekla works Mina's arm and then DDTs the arm and locks it in a Kimura. It was such a lovely spot. I absolutely loved that. Actually, it was a spot that was stolen for the semi-main as well. Overall, I think the right person won. Until we're sure that international travel is going to be fine and can be done regularly, I think it's right to put the SWA belt on a Gaijin. Obviously, at the moment, the only person who really has a claim to that is Tekla. So, all in all, the right result, 3.25 stars, far better than we anticipated, Matt.
Yeah, and I'm glad. And I know Minu even said, we're hoping we're wrong. We're hoping we're wrong. And hey, I'm man enough to admit when I was wrong, and I was glad that I was wrong because these two, I think these two are going to play a big role in Stardom's future.
Oh, God, yeah, absolutely. We move on to match 4 then, the Goddesses of Stardom Championships, with the champions, Fukuoka Double Crazy, which of course is Hazuki and Koguma, the champions, defeating DDM, Mai, Himi, which is Maika and Himika, with a roll-up, Koguma rolling up Himika in 13 minutes and 27 seconds. Now, the biggest speculation heading into this match, Matt, was what Maika's method of combating the hypnotic bear dance would be. And I'll be honest, I'm still not entirely sure.
To give you listeners a little behind the scenes look at so what had happened was, obviously the Lady C match was first, no mask, and then Azumi Utami came out, no mask. And I text Rob and I said, because I know that he finished the show before I did. I said, Queen's Quest, no mask with a thumbs down, because I just think that adds a completely different aura to their gimmick and the entrance. So by the time Rob doesn't text me back. So literally, as Hazuki and as they're getting the matches, this match is getting ready to start. I write down in my notes, no bear gimmick, no flirty Hazuki, ? I don't even put my pen cap on. Rob texts me back and says, yeah, no mask, no flirty Hazuki. What the heck's going on with this show? That's how well we're I don't know how many thousands of miles away. But that just shows you how in sync, and I don't mean the 90s pop group in sync, how in sync me and Rob are. And I text him back. I said, I literally just wrote down no flirty Hazuki. I said, I didn't even put my pen cap back on, and you text me. What timing? What timing, sir?
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, all I could see from this was that Maika attempted to hypnotize a very, very stony-faced Hazuki. So whether it was her plan to try and hypnotize Koguma's friend, I don't particularly know. It was a flawed plan, is basically what we're saying here. But aside from the flawed plan that was Maika's attempt at sidestepping the bear dance, this was another great match, Matt.
Yeah, it was solid. They're really great teams, great double teams from all four. Everything made sense. I talk about it all the time, but Hazuki, when she goes for the cover and she doesn't hook the leg, and whenever I see someone doesn't hook the leg, I always think of Tracy Smothers when he's like, hook the leg, man. But obviously to set up that crossface, and she did it twice, and there's no daylight in her crossface. The way she transitioned that crossface is absolutely fantastic. But these four worked really well together. I thought the finish was brilliant. I mean, Himika just destroys poor Koguma with that huge lariat. And even leading up to it, Koguma throws like a Takayama-style German suplex. Like, holy jeez. And Mike and Himika, they're no Natsupoi. They're no, Hana Arena. They're the, two bigger people on the roster. And the way that she just throws that German suplex. But she got a receipt back from Himika, just destroys her with the stiffest lariat I think I've ever seen in Stardom. And then she goes for the cover and she just gets rolled up on like a flash pin. So I thought that was a pretty clever finish. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Now, just the only thing is you had a flash pin here, and then you had a flash pin when FWC beat ALK for the tag belts. I think that their next title defense, and not to spoil anybody who hasn't seen the show from the first, because they announced who the next tag title defense is. I think your next tag title defense, it needs to be a more dominant, not dominant, but like definite win, like a Hazuki Brainbuster or the top rope splash from Koguma.
Yeah, I agree with you in that. I mean, the problem we had here was you don't particularly want either member of DDM to seem weak. So, it was similar with ALK. Yes, have them lose the belts, but Shiori's the red belt champ and Julia's Julia. So you don't particularly want either of them taking the pin, whereas a flash pin, especially after Himika basically beheads Koguma, it didn't feel like Himika looked any sort of weaker from taking that pinfall. And Jesus Christ, that sell that Koguma did for the lariat and then landed super high on her neck. It was a proper arse-clenching moment. You think, oh my God, And then she just rolls up and oh, she's fine. How is she fine after taking that? You mentioned that amazing suplex from Koguma. The strength that Koguma has, she's quickly becoming one of my favorite things in Stardom. She's so good. And for me, I love Hazuki. I love Maika. I love Himika. But Koguma at the moment, just every time she wrestles, seems to be on this level. And she can mix the comedy with the great wrestling so seamlessly that, yeah, I think she's great. Weird to see that Himika goes full on rage at the end and beats up the referee.
Oh, I must have missed that. I think I was, what was I doing? I think I was finishing something up for work. I think the match ended, and I must have missed that. She beat up the ref?
She pushed the referee for counting 3, then sort of Maika held her back, and then she got out of the ring and continued to push the referee and stuff. So, yeah, it seemed really weird. Just a very, very weird way of doing it. But even so, that's the way they chose to go. I'm still wondering where this Himika singles shot is coming from, for the belt.
I don't know. I think one way or another, I think we'll get there.
Yeah. We have got that big show in February, but with Syuri saying her next title defense isn't going to be till March, I see the white belt headline in that Cinderella Journey show. And we've had that announced, but we'll talk about that in a bit. So I gave it 3 3/4, actually. I really liked the match. I thought the chemistry that all 4 women had was really, really good. Like I say, Koguma at the moment, if we were to stop everything and we were to do our Stardom Cast 2022 awards right now, Koguma's my Wrestler of the Year. Hasn't had a miss, whether it be an undercard tag, a championship match, a singles match. Hasn't had a miss. I think she's doing tremendous work.
She's the most over. She's by far the most. I know we're in the clap crowd, but nobody gets the crowd going like she does. I mean, it's the way her connection with the crowd with the whole bear dance. And again, on paper, it sounds funny. If you would have told me a year ago, a guy who loves, Minoru Suzuki and Katsuhiro Shibata, that the person that you're really going to enjoy in Stardom is this person that does this bear dancing gimmick. And it's like she does it, it's funny, it works, and then she drops you on your head. So...
Yeah, those suplexes are so impressive. Anyway, so I gave that 3 3/4. Another match that I gave 3 3/4, and this might be the first time me and Matt disagree, was match 5, the Wonder of Stardom Championship match with Sai Kamatani, the champion, defeating Unagi Sayaka in her first title defense with the Phoenix Splash in 18 minutes and 47 seconds. Now, Matt, the first question I'm going to ask you, is this the best Unagi singles performance?
I had, again, me and Rob were texting back and forth, and I told him I was a little disappointed in this match. Now, obviously I'm a big fan of both. And in the immortal words of Roddy Piper, anybody that answers the bell, I have the ultimate respect for. If this match was just a normal match or a match for the 5-star, I think I would have rated it a little bit higher. You have to understand the dynamics that are going into this match. Number one, it's for the Wonder of Stardom title. It's for the white belt. It's a big, big deal. Now, Saya just won it, and probably, I think we'll both agree, against Tam, her best match, and an absolute banger of a match. Now, this belt has main evented shows before that the red belt has been defended on. Hence, the Budokan show. Tam and Julia were over Utami and Saya. So it's a big deal. Now, I'm not going to go into the lineage of the white belt. I don't have the time for that. However, there is a book out there that'll go over the lineage of that belt and other belts. It's entitled Living the Dream, Stardom's 10th Anniversary Review. Rob, can you please tell our listeners where they can get this book?
Lulu and Amazon, available in all countries. People are going to get sick of this book.
I think it's hilarious. Anywho, now get back on course. So you have that. You also have the fact that it's on pay-per-view. So you kind of you have your secondary belt. You want to give the viewers just a little bit more. You have that. You have the fact that this is Saya's first title defense. So you need to set this off with an absolute banger. You have to have something that's going to set the table. Not only do you have that, but then you have some people that I'm assuming have probably never seen Stardom up until Wrestle Kingdom, either that were in the crowd or that watched on New Japan World or got the pay-per-view on Fight. And the person that came off looking the best in the Stardom match was Saya. Perfectly clean Star Crusher, perfectly clean Phoenix Splash. So you have all that going in, and you have Saya really on the back end of this match. Like if this was like a 60-40 match for Unagi. And it's not saying Unagi's offense isn't believable, but you having a first title defense. Now, it'd be one thing if it was like Tam getting a rematch, or it was Utami, or Mayu, or like a really good striker like a Siri or a Hazuki. That I can understand. But for your first title defense, that you're on the back end of this match against somebody that's a little bit lower on the card from you, and the finish, I just thought came off as sloppy. I thought the way they got in the Star Crusher was really good. I thought she hit it sloppy, and then obviously the Phoenix Splash, she basically double kneed Unagi on the way down. So I think even people that were watching the match at the Tokyo Dome saw this flawless Star Crusher and this flawless Phoenix Splash. And not only that, but this is somebody that you're building to eventually probably have a match with Kota Ibushi, and probably having a match with whoever the mystery person is, who we're starting to think is Kari-san, Kari Hojo. Again, I didn't dislike this match. I gave it 3.25 stars. I just thought that, this would have been closer to 4 stars for me. I was just a little bit disappointed in it.
I see where you're coming from, to be fair. But I enjoyed... You expect Saya to have these perfectly executed matches. These athletically pleasing, aesthetically pleasing matches. But Tam said you've got to embrace that dirty side. Okay, that ugly side if you want to be a champion. And here she had to embrace that ugly side. Now, I'm not making excuses for that Phoenix Splash. That looked horrendous to take, and I really feel sorry for Unagi. But, that could explain why it was more strike heavy. Because there was an intensity to this match. Like, Unagi brought the fire in this match, and Saya rose to that level. The amount of STOs from Unagi, from the top rope on the outside, she tried everything. Now, was this the barn burner that clearly, a lot of people were expecting? No, not quite. However, for me, it wasn't disappointing. It was something different. I understand that, you want that title run to start off with a bang. Completely understand that. But do you want to throw that away on a show that has got Mayu versus Julia and a red belt defense? That's the question you've got to ask. So, have it against Unagi. That defense that she's definitely going to win, but can still put on a good match with. Unagi, I personally think this is her best individual performance. I think she looked $1 million. I think she acted like $1 million. I think there were some moves that came off really, really, really well. I do think, though, and this is it's not a nitpick for me, it's how I would have liked to have done it. I think the roll through Star Crusher should have been the finish. Because we've avoided Saya using the Phoenix Splash all the times. And this is no offense to Unagi at all. But Saya, up until this point, has hit the Phoenix Splash 4 times. 5 times now, obviously, with the title victory. Does she need to hit it every single time? No, it's her nuclear option. For me, that roll through Star Crusher was enough adaptation and looked cool enough to be the finish. However, it's great rub for Unagi. When they faced off at, I believe it was Yokohama Cinderella in summer. Yokohama Cinderella in spring in April last year. Don't forget Saya Kamitani beat Unagi with the Star Crusher. So, it's a show of growth for Unagi to be able to kick out of it. I just would have liked it to be the finish. I did give it 3 3/4. But I can see your points, Matt.
We're only half a star off. Again, I didn't think it was a terrible match. I thought it was good, but for the fact that it's for the Wonder of Stardom Championship, Saya's coming off her best, I think her best match ever. Tam's probably best match since she won the belt. They're coming off, and I'm not. It's not fair to compare Unagi to Tam. Tam is just on a complete, my love for her, regardless of Tam. But Tam just, she's on a main event level, and Unagi's not just there yet. But I just thought this match would have been a little bit better. Do I want to see a rematch down the road? Absolutely. Do I think that they'll have what I think will be a better match? Absolutely. Maybe somebody tweaked a knee, or somebody got tired, or something happened in the match where, to me, it seemed to just a little bit off. And again, maybe that was just me.
We move on then to our semi-main event, which was the number one contendership match for the World of Stardom Championship. Now, initially, this was supposed to be a triple threat between Tam, Julia, and Mayu Iwatani, and obviously this was changed when Tam was pulled from the card, just like the pre-show match was changed when May and Waka were pulled from the card. However, this ended up being a singles match, which ended in a time limit draw, a 30-minute time limit draw. Now, when it came up on the screen that the winner of this match would challenge at one of the dates, straight away, knowing that there's two dates at Sumo Hall, I knew we were headed for a draw, Matt.
And that's okay. Sometimes, when you have predictability, again, when I was reading, when I got up that Saturday morning, when I read that, I'm like, I kind of know what's happening. And then less than 5 minutes later, I got the result. And I was like, that's okay. If you kind of know where you're going, as long as it's a good journey. Sometimes it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And as long as you get a really good journey, and goddamn, for 30 minutes, not only that, probably even more than 30 minutes, just between the curtain to curtain, as we call it, just the entrances and then the promo afterwards. So for 40 minutes or whatever it was, damn, I was entertained. This was so good. So good.
It really was. Like, I've seen people say that this is an early match of the year contender, obviously with end of January, and I've seen it compared to, the Ospreay and Okada match from Wrestle Kingdom. I completely agree. I think this is an early match of the year contender. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. The effort and intensity that both women brought. I mean, for that suplex spot alone, it's a match of the year contender, but like, I've seen people not like the opening, the grappling, and I thought it told a good story. Julia is still clearly shook from that encounter with Prominence, and you can see before the bell goes that she's edgy, she's sort of looking around, she's nervous, and she needs that opening to calm herself down. And, I mean, it's also the first tangible chance she's had at the red belt, so, she's bound to be that, a little bit nervous. And, if you want to be even more granular about it, also mirrors their previous 3 encounters. All 3 singles encounters they've had before this have started with extended grappling exchanges. And, speaking of those 3, we've had 1 win each and 1 time limit draw. So nothing to separate them. I mean, it was just sheer brutality, Matt.
It was brilliant. And plus, with the grappling, you got to pace yourself. You're going 30 minutes. You're going 30 minutes. You have to pace yourself. But yeah, everything made sense. We go on and on about Mayu selling, and I will go every time that she's in a match or on this podcast, I will just constantly just bring that up. But we actually talked about it on the Patreon episode about Julia with Saya Ida, where she had her in the Rings of Saturn. She's tearing the tape off and punching at it. It was kind of funny because I watched that match maybe about a week or so ago, and she kind of did the same thing to Mayu here. She's tearing off the tape. She has her in the Rings of Saturn. She's punching at it, and she's just getting, more out of it because Mayu's selling. And kind of, let me hit the rewind button a little bit. First of all, the entrances, both these ladies came off looking like stars. Mayu has new gear. She looked like she had a Christmas bow on the back of her jacket. And then she throws it over the top rope to the other members of Stars, and it seemed like that thing weighed about 80 pounds, so God bless her. Julia, again, just she's always carries herself like a star, but ever since she came back from her injury, she's carrying herself as a main event star and maybe like the cornerstone of the company. And Julia's tan game, it's absolutely on point here. Now, I don't know if just because she's so tan and Mayu looks like, Larry Bird clear here, but clearly there's a skin tone difference between the two of them. So, but I thought that was kind of an interesting dynamic. But yeah, Mayu selling really good. They wind up going out to the floor. They tease tombstones back and forth. Eventually, Mayu hits the tombstone. Both of them are absolutely exhausted. They get in at about 18 and a half. They wind up striking back and forth. I mean, the strikes just made sense. Everything was back and forth. And they start hitting each other with chaining German suplexes, just back and forth, back and forth. And they both did what I call the Kawada sell. And what that is, if you ever watch like a Kawada match, he'll take like a big forearm from Misawa or something from Kobashi or a suplex like a German, and he'll try to fighting spirit up. And you think he's getting up, and he gets up, and by the time he gets up, he's exhausted, he just collapses. And that's what the two of them do. And this crowd, again, it's a clap crowd. This crowd, when they did the what I call the Kawada sell, is absolutely coming unglued. I wish this wasn't a clap crowd. I wish we were, post-COVID for 1,000 reasons. But this is one of them alone, because I think this crowd would have been, as loud as they were would have been absolutely even louder. I love the Mayu hitting the exhausted second rope moonsault, and then as the timer's counting down, she goes to the top rope to try to hit the one moonsault to finish her off, and she's stumbling and stumbling. Now in my head, I'm knowing, okay, she's going to do the moonsault, whether she hits it or not, I don't know, but she's selling it so well that it looks like she's going to fall. And then I'm thinking to myself, it would be so like Mayu Iwatani to fall off the top rope, hit her head off the apron, and then get counted out. Like, that would be like something that she would do. Because I was like, there's no way she's gonna. There's no. I mean, she's just selling exhaustion, and the crowd gets even louder because they want, like, no, don't fall. No, please hit the moonsault. Please don't fall. And then she hits the moonsault. She doesn't have enough to cover. Julia kicks out, and as the clock is running, Mayu winds up kneeing her on the way down. Blitz Julia's chin open. In the last 10 seconds, you just see Julia with half her face covered in her own blood, just headbutting the crap out of Mayu. As the time expires, I mean, we talk about sometimes time limit draws are overdone. To me, I don't care as long as the match was good. This was 4 3/4 stars, and I think if I go back and watch this, I might bump it up to 5 stars. This was as good as it gets. And Rob, I have to ask you, because you've seen way more of Julia than I have. For me, this was Julia's best match. Has she had a match better than this?
Ooh, it's in a top 3, definitely. I mean, you've got, talking in ring, you've got Tam at Budokan, which everyone seems to think is her best in-ring match. So this is the one you compare it to. With the story, I think it's probably just the Tam one. But from a cold in-ring standpoint, this was tremendous. I mean, they just hit each other with absolutely everything. That exhausted moonsault spot was absolutely tremendous. And we talked about Kota Ibushi earlier in terms of Saya Kamatani. He has that switch where he seems to just go from laughable goof to I'm going to kill a man. And Mayu did the exact same thing, and she looked into the camera. I think there was 2 very clear points. There was one when she was on the outside, and there's one where she's on the top rope, and she looked utterly demented. It was great. There's a moment where obviously they're trading tombstones on the outside, like I said, and there's a moment where the referee gets knocked to his knees, and Julia uses him to propel herself into a missile dropkick into Mayu. Loved that spot. Absolutely loved it. Popped huge for it. Overall, I mean, it's between 4.5 and 4 3/4 for me, to be perfectly honest. My one big question coming out of this match, and, we ask the hard questions on this podcast. Mayu goes for a suicide dive, and Julia hits her with an umbrella. Where the fuck did that umbrella come from?
Yeah, not only that, but I wrote my notes. The ref kind of that should have been disqualification. I'm a big fan of, hey, you got to follow the rules, and Julia throwing the ref down. Hey, you can't touch, the ref. So it's like, I guess that was nitpicky to me, but at the same time, it's like, this is a high stakes match. This isn't the opener. This isn't the second match. You have 2 of your biggest stars competing for a world title shot on your next pay-per-view that I think is going to do gangbuster numbers. So it's like, you kind of excuse it there. But, sometimes I'm like, yeah, just kind of leave the ref alone. But I understand the dropkick spot off. I thought it was cool. But yeah, I actually had to rewind it. I'm like, what did she hit her with? I thought it was like the Oedo Tai sign, that maybe they just left it there. But I was like, yeah, why was there an umbrella under the ring? Like, was there a leak in the ceiling right there? And yeah, that was I was just like, huh, yeah. It's kind of, because the match was so good, I didn't even write down the note, because I was like, oh, whatever, it is what it is. But yeah, you're right. Like, where did that shit come from? And those are the hard questions. So if you fans know where that umbrella came from, please, hit us up over on social media. We need to know, damn it.
Unless it's a subtle sort of hint towards Kairi Hojo. Maybe.
Or so you have Ibushi versus Saya. Maybe you have Julia versus Okada because he's the Rainmaker. What about that?
There you go. See, guys, who says that fantasy booking goes too far? There's some great limb work in this as well, especially in the middle of the match where Julia targets Mayu's arm and literally hits this hammerlock suplex that causes Mayu to land on her injured arm. It's just utterly fantastic. She sells it brilliantly. She sells so much brilliantly in this match. And she throws a forearm with that injured arm and literally collapses with the pain. And it's just little things like that that make a match so much more believable, but also make a babyface so much easier to get behind, is that selling, that believability. And I thought they managed this absolutely tremendously. At the culmination of the match, Rossi says, because of the draw, both women will get a chance at the red belt at World Climax. The man doesn't even... Basically, the bell hits, and just as the bell finishes ringing, Rossi's up there with a microphone. Like, he's there. He's not waiting for no man. Julia offers Mayu the chance to choose her day first, as she is the senior competitor, and Mayu wisely chooses the second night so that she doesn't have to fight twice. She's an underrated thinker, Matt, I tell you.
You kind of would have thought, because since she's the big baby face, you kind of would have thought she would have picked night one. And I know that when we were discussing who's going to get the shots on night 1 and 2, I thought it would be Mayu and Tam, and you thought, well, no, Julia's going to get the shot at night 2. So kind of almost spoils who's going to win at night 1. So there's kind of that. And I thought the promo, Julia, when she grabbed the microphone, she goes, you made me bleed. What the hell, Mayu? And then Mayu grabs the microphone. She's like, oh, I'm sorry. And I don't think she should have said that, because it's like, well, you're in a competition match. It's supposed to be, let's try to keep a little kayfabe. It's like, hey, you got bloody. But Mayu, God bless her, it's just like, hey, I'm sorry.
She's just too nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've now got Mayu on night 2, so the 27th, and that means that Julia will be fighting Syuri on the 26th. Now, obviously, I had my fancy booking and best laid plans and all that. That's now completely out of the window. Because for me, Syuri has to beat Mayu to complete this legacy. And as that's a storyline they're going for, I can't see Syuri not beating Mayu, because that's where this whole thing started. Do they go to another time limit draw with Julia, or does Syuri beat her outright? Is that where this whole DDM split is going to come from? Julia's jealousy that Syuri is still the red belt champion. She's defeated Julia for it. It could be. And then we see the split, Syuri, Maika, Himika, and then Tekla, Mirai, and Julia. It could be the way we go. It'll be an interesting couple of days that weekend, definitely.
Here's a thought. Okay, so now the supposed 5-on-5 Prominence versus DDM is on the second night of these shows at the end of March, correct?
It'll have to be, yeah.
So, okay, say Sherry beats Julia. She beats her with some sort of she's a lot of high-impact move where it impacts Julia's neck. Julia takes the pinfall on night 2 of these because of her hurt neck. And now she's just like, I would have won that match. I embarrassed DDM. I embarrassed Stardom, and it's Sherry's fault. Now, and then you have Sherry. Obviously, this has to end with her beating Mayu. After that, where do you go? So I think Sherry beats Julia. She beats Mayu on night 2. Momo comes out and challenges her. So you pretty much did everything you wanted to do with Sherry. And now you have Momo as the next challenger. And then you put the belt on Momo. So I think then this way you have all those stories going through, and then this way you can have a couple people chasing Momo, and then start the DDM split as well. Because I don't think you do this DDM split with Sherry as champion. I just think that's just kind of just too much. You know what I mean? You have her as a title, a championship reign, and you're doing the split as well. I think that might be just too much.
Like I said before in the previous podcast, it'll be interesting to see how long the reigns of Saya Kamatani and for Syuri go, because obviously we've had a couple of long reigns with the red belt, between Mayu going 377 days and Utami going 409. So we've had 2 long reigns. Does Syuri go the distance with it? Does she reach, 300, maybe 400 days with it? Does Saya Kamatani reach 280 days, which both Tam and Julia managed? I think Tam managed 311 days, I think, if I'm off the top of my head. Or do they have short reigns? It'll be interesting to see. This World Climax show is extremely intriguing. And obviously, we've kept saying Syuri as champion, which means we've spoiled the main event, which was match 7, the World of Stardom Championship match, with Syuri the champion defeating Mirai with the Vermilion World in 26 minutes and 47 seconds. Now, Matt, I've seen a few people challenge the idea that it took Syuri almost 27 minutes to defeat Mirai, and that she then had to pull out her, in quotation marks, nuclear option to then defeat her. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, if you're listening to this podcast, I think you should already know who won, so spoilers. But no, I thought this match was great for everything I kind of complained about the Wonder of Stardom Championship match. This was the complete opposite. You needed Shuri to look like a killer, and she did. She owned 65% of this match, but the 35-40 that Mirai got, it was comeback, and it was all good stuff. I mean, Shuri just lays right into her right from the get-go. They're grappling. Those kicks in the beginning are just brutal. Mirai winds up taking a little bit of advantage. She hits a couple forearms that Shuri kind of doesn't sell, but it kind of makes sense why she didn't sell, because she just laid into her with all these really stiff kicks. And the forearms that Mirai started throwing really weren't all that impactful. And I think Shuri even said something to her kind of like, on the cuff, like, hey, hit me harder. And then once she started hitting her harder, then Shuri went back on the sell. But I didn't mind the length of this match. I thought this match was excellent. It was everything I liked in wrestling. Hard hitting, believable, selling, really good pace. Mirai wind up hitting that hammerlock Northern Lights that she almost killed Ruaka with the week before. So now we know what it was supposed to look like. And then Shuri kicks out and then floats right over into the double wrist lock, which I was a huge, huge fan of. And then Shuri winds up fighting back with strikes, submissions, does what she does best. And then Mirai fires back up with those left-handed lariats, which I've talked about before. I'm such a big fan of. And I guess that's almost like her go-to, like Okada with the drop kick, or Arisa with that fancy flying knee that she used to do before she retired. It's kind of like her thing to kind of create separation. And then Shuri just needs to unload. Absolutely needs to unload everything. It kind of reminds me of like a Diaz brothers fight where they're stalking somebody and they'll hit them with a combination and they're on the ropes and they know that the fight is over and the fans know the fight is over. It's just a matter of how many blows, how they're going to finish them. But Shuri winds up hitting a few buzzsaw kicks, some horrendous spinning back chops, and then the Vermilion World for the finish. So I have no problem with how long it took her to beat her, just because she owned 60% of this match. And it's nice to kind of see her almost like nuclear finish in a title match. I think it just means that much more. And again, for Shuri kind of dominating this match, Mirai winds up coming out looking better. I thoroughly enjoyed this match, the pacing, the psychology, the storytelling. I thought this was a really good way for Shuri's red belt defense to start. I gave this one 4 1/4.
Man, we're on the same wavelength again. 4 1/4 from me as well. I mean, Mirai gave an outstanding account of herself. I mean, all of the selling inconsistencies that we bemoaned a couple of weeks ago, completely forgotten. In my opinion, her facials were absolutely fantastic. She's got a very expressive face like Himika does, and you can really read, especially as the match wears on, the desperation in her face. I thought absolutely tremendous. And going back to the point I previously made about, how Shuri had to go to that nuclear option, I think, to me anyway, like, Shuri was almost taking the challenge of the untried Mirai too lightly. And then she realizes the time limit's approaching, and then she needs to ensure that the match is over definitively, and that's why she goes straight to Vermilion, where she doesn't even attempt the Ruin or the Emerald Flosion variation that she has. So I thought that was there was one particular moment that I absolutely loved, though, and it's where Mirai attempts to absorb a kick to the side, and she does catch it, but then the pain from the strike anyway is too much, and she collapses anyway, having caught. I just loved that little bit, and it was that little bit of selling that just really pushed this over the edge for me. There was huge stiff strikes from both women. Some of those kicks from Shuri, absolutely brutal. The shoulder tackles from Mirai, those lariats she was throwing, absolutely fantastic. She even hit a spinning Vader bomb, which looked really cool. But yeah, overall, you said about how you wanted Saya's white belt reign to open with an impact. And we sort of glossed over the fact that, this wasn't exactly the highest profile person for the first of Shuri's title defenses. But I think, considering this is Mirai's second singles match in the company, I think she did an absolutely magnificent job.
Yeah, it really upped her stock. Shuri did a good job making what offense Mirai did look really good, but at the same time protected herself as champion. And that's what you want a title match to do. And at the end of the day, everybody looks good, everybody gets over, and the most important thing is you make that belt more important coming out than going in. and that at the end of the day, when you have a world of any major title, when it's on last on a pay-per-view in front of over 1,000 people, that's what you wanted to do. And these two, I thought, absolutely knocked it out of the park. I thought everything made sense. I thought it was solid, absolutely solid. I thoroughly enjoyed this match.
Yeah, and, we said about how Syuri dominated 65% of this match, very much like a lion sort of stalking its prey. But she gave Mirai a lot. Like, Mirai hit the Miramare shock, and Syuri kicked out. So she was given a lot. Syuri was hit with the big move on the outside. So it wasn't like this was an extended squash by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, don't get me wrong. The result was never in doubt. But it was still an enjoyable match. And I think that's the hallmark of, a good match, is that even though the result is somewhat predictable, you still enjoy the match nevertheless. Very much like the semi-main, where the time limit draw was very much, sort of a given, really, when you consider it. But the match was still phenomenal. I thoroughly enjoyed this match. They did a great job. If this is the trajectory Mirai's on, good grief, we're looking at a future World of Stardom champion, aren't we?
I wrote down is obviously she's, I always say injury because you never know what happened or COVID. But when you're going to go into the 5-star coming up here in a handful of months, you're going to see maybe a rematch here, a match with Maika, a matchup with Hazuki, a matchup with Momo. I mean, the possibilities are absolutely endless. And I think it's just her stock's just going to go up. And this was, again, not only was this a great play setter for the championship run of Syuri, but this was something that we looked at. We weren't sure how Mirai was going to come out of this. And I haven't heard from anybody or talked to anybody that didn't think Mirai's stock, doubled coming out of this matches going in.
So that is the end of the first Stardom pay-per-view of the year. Just a couple of things to note before we leave you. The press conference for the Cinderella Journey in Nagoya, which is the next big show on the 23rd of February, which I believe is a Wednesday. That is tomorrow as we record, so it'll be the Friday. So, of course, we won't be able to talk about it because we've already recorded. We're recording on the 3rd. However, the first 3 matches have been announced for that card. Obviously, this sort of ruins the results for Korakuen. So if you haven't watched the Korakuen show, or you haven't seen the results of the Korakuen show, then just turn us off now. We won't be offended. We'll see you guys later. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week. So I'll give you a little bit of time to pause. If you don't mind, keep listening. So, again, 23rd of February, Cinderella Journey in Nagoya. Again, as me and Matt said, there's no red belt match for this card, but there is a high-speed title match, which is going to be the champion Starlight Kid versus Azumi. We've got the Goddesses of Stardom title match, which is the champions FWC, Hazuki and Koguma, taking on Unagi Sayaka and Mina Shirakawa. And then what we assume is going to be the main event. It might not be, but at the moment it looks like it's going to be the main event, which is the Wonder of Stardom Championship match between Saya Kamitani and Natsupoi. Matt, of those 3 matches, is there anything that surprises you? Anything that, is extremely tasty? Anything that's a little bit disappointing? What are your initial thoughts?
No, nothing at all. And I didn't know about Saya and Natsupoi. Is that Natsupoi's first white belt shot?
No, she had one in July last year against Tam. Very good match. Underrated.
Against Tam. Yeah, that's right. All 3 of those matches should be really, really good. And I Natsupoi and Saya, I think they're, styles makes fights and they have similar styles. Obviously, the one I'm looking forward to the most is the match that we've seen the most, and that's Azumi and Starlight Kid. I mean, but now you have a completely different dynamic going into it, where Azumi's going to be more pissed off because Starlight Kid was the puppet master, pretty much at taking away, her friend in Momo. So that adds a new wrinkle towards it. And we talked about how FWC, they need like an impactful win, like no roll up, like an impactful win. And I think their match with Mina and Unagi is going to be really, really good. But I think this is where they get it here. So all 3 of those matches on the same show. And I'm assuming we're probably going to get some tag stuff with Julia, Mayu, Sherry. some stuff with the bigger factions. But these 3 matches to kind of tail end the show, I think it's going to be really, really good, and can't wait to watch it.
And with that, let's call it there. So thank you so much for listening, guys. We really, really, really do appreciate it. Don't forget, you can subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean. We are physically everywhere. You can go and check out our website, www.podmania.co.uk. We've got all the podcast archives there, as well as our match rating archive as well. You can find us on Twitter at the Stardom Cast. Of course, if you want to join our Patreon, then it is patreon.com/the Stardom Cast. We cannot thank you enough for helping us in that way. You can talk to me on Twitter at RealRobGoodwin. Matt, where can they find you?
Search me out on Instagram and or the Twitter, Matt Turner OF, and I really appreciate all the positive comments. It seems like every other time I pick up my phone and look at social media, we get some positive comments about the podcast, so we greatly appreciate it.
Oh, hugely. Thank you ever so much, guys. Again, you can go and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you prefer it in the visual realm, and of course our Facebook page, The Stardom Cast. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. So until then, see you guys again soon.